Good evening. I am Larry Scalfari, the Associate Director of Music here at St. Andrew, and welcome tonight for coming. We are here to celebrate the 20-year anniversary of the rich music ministry of Mark Zwilling. I have worked alongside Mark and have known him for 13 years, and it's been a pleasure to do music in this wonderful church and just have the freedom to express ourselves in so many wonderful ways. Now, Mark, yes. Mark has only done small recitals like at Advent or Lent, so this is his first long, full, complete recital. I'm so glad you are here tonight to enjoy this. Would you help me in welcoming my colleague and very dear friend, Mark Zwilling?
Where do you all come from? Don't you have something better to do on a Thursday night? Thank you so much for being here tonight. You know, one of the main things about being able to stay in a place a long time is to have great people to work with. And I have so many talented people to work with at this church. And so I get to do a lot of wonderful things because they really do all the work and do all the singing and do all the stuff. So this is my first full recital here at St. Andrew because God knows I have no time to practice. And so I'm so glad to be able to do this for you. So it's near Halloween, and so you'd almost expect to hear something of a Halloween song. So we are going to explore the Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Bach. And so I'll see you at the end of this. Thank you. So that was Halloween. Now we're going to Christmas. And the facilities people kept coming in while I was practicing and going, now, why are you playing Christmas music again? Isn't it a little early? And I'm like, well, it's one of the recital pieces. So when I was about 14, I went to a youth group at the base chapels and in Albuquerque, and I was starting to play the organ, and they actually gave me a little bit of money to play for the services, and I was terrible because I'd only started piano when I was 13, so I couldn't really read music. So I would memorize all the music for the church services, and so if there's anything changed at the last minute, and that was the Air Force Chapel in Albuquerque. But there were two chapels. There was two bases. There was, in those days, there were Kirtland and Sandia, and I would drive from one to the other. But I was also active in the youth group, and it's one of those that I wish I could go back and play the way I should have played in those days. But the Silent Night that you're going to hear is from one of the organists that I heard at the base chapel, and he actually became kind of a mentor and would show me little things about, you might try this, probably going, oh my gosh, I hope this young man doesn't go into music. But I did. And then, if you're in my church choir, you know that I'm having a obsession about Dan Forrest right now. Dan Forrest, who looks 12 in that picture, I think he is from a very conservative university called Bob Jones University, but he's an amazing composer, and the choir loves, I think, hopefully you like singing music from Dan Forrest. But I'm going to play a Lenten piece, so that's near Easter, a wonderful tune called My Jesus, I Love Thee. So first Silent Night, and then a tune from Dan Forrest on the piano, My Jesus, I Love Thee. So in the late 1980s, I was in my very first church job in Roswell, New Mexico. The aliens weren't as big of a deal in those days because they had a bus company that was actually running that like employed a lot of workers, and then the bus company closed, and they thought we need to push the alien thing a little bit more. But when I was there, it was mainly a bus town, and with the Military Institute also, and I worked at First Presbyterian Church in Roswell, but I decided I'd begin a community choir, and I thought maybe we should do something, you know, kind of ease into it, so I picked the Mozart Requiem. And my accompanist at the time came up to me and they said, you realize that you haven't done this community choir at all. This is brand new, and you're kind of green. And I said, yeah, but it's Mozart. It can't be that hard. So we did one of our inaugural concerts with the Mozart Requiem, and my accompanist played the piece that for the kind of the prelude of that concert. She played this piece called Benedictus, and it's by Max Reger. And what I love about it, you music geeks out there, is you'll never find out what key it's in. It's in supposedly the key of D flat, and it like lands on D flat for one split second, and then it circles around and goes here and there and all this kind of fun stuff. Some of my piano students are out there going, oh my God, he's gonna do one of those things again. That circle of fifths things, but it's like, wait, it will start to like resolve, and then just when it gets to the resolution chord, it goes, oh, it didn't resolve, it went on. So I love it, and I'm going to play Benedictus. What a journey through all those chords. Huh? So the next piece I'm going to play, group of pieces, is chorale preludes. And so there was a very famous organist, a Lutheran organist, a very high Lutheran organist named Paul Montz, who wrote lots and lots of music. And actually, he never wrote music, but they would record him improvising before hymns, and his congregation would sit there and listen to this improvisation on the hymn, and then at one point they'd stand and sing the hymn. Well, I was at a workshop at the San Francisco Theological Seminary outside of the Bay Area, and Paul Montz was the guest organist. It was the mid-90s, and they said, Mark, he would really like to have an assistant up in the loft. Would you be willing to kind of pull his stops and like help him? And I was like, oh yes, this is like so exciting. And so I went up there, and there's Dr. Montz there, and I'm like, hi, I'm Mark. And he said, you're going to experience a Lutheran service. The joy of a Lutheran service is there's not a lot of talking. We go from one musical thing to another. And that workshop was showing the example of a Lutheran service. Well, he begins one of these famous preludes before the hymn, and they had explained before that they were modeling a true Lutheran service. And all of a sudden, over his playing, we heard this, excuse me, I know a lot of you are not Lutherans, so I would like to go ahead and announce the hymns, and would you turn, and Dr. Montz was getting redder and redder and redder, and he said, and then the coup de grace came was when the pastor said, I wish the organist would play a little bit softer. So I'm going to play one of the pieces by Dr. Montz that hopefully you won't yell and say, could you play softer? The next piece I'm going to do is another chorale prelude by J.S. Bach, and called Sleepers Awake, or in German, Wachet auf. And it just is, it's an Advent kind of chorale prelude. And then my final piece is written by a man named Richard Purvis, who for many years growing up was at the Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. And he was the ultimate in like what we, some of us, if you're organists out there, most of them have the too much pride to show up at one of these concerts. But if you are an organist out there, it's one of the slushy pieces. So you'll hear the theater part of the organ, and San Francisco Grace Cathedral had a beautiful harp, and so you'll get to hear the harp stop. And we have a harp stop too, and so those are the three chorale preludes you'll hear now. So I've had a couple of people ask, what made you maybe choose to not go into more of a performing career? And the answer could be found with my friend Jill Aubrey, who we hung out with at my old alma mater, Eastern New Mexico University. And I hung out at the theater department, and my professors would say, remember, you're supposed to be in the practice room. And I'm like, but the theater people are so much fun. Well, my friend Jill Aubrey did a wonderful piece. She did a music theater recital, and I was her accompanist. And she did a big dance piece called Music in the Mirror from Chorus Line about an aging dancer. And I even called Jill recently, and she now lives in Albuquerque. And I called Jill and I said, I'm doing that piece from college. And she says, oh my goodness. She says, I hope you've learned to play it better now. And she could have left that part out. And then obviously I've chosen this music pretty specifically. I chose the next piece, Send in the Clowns by Sondheim. Everybody thinks it's circus clowns, but it's actually a theater term to things are not going so well, so they need to bring in some comedy. But also, it's about a song about bad timing. And when I was working in the mid-90s with Michael Crawford, and it was a wonderful experience working with him, I used to be you'll understand why I'm telling you this, but in the olden days, especially my students are going to understand this, but we used to have, instead of cell phones, we had pagers. And I worked for a funeral home as an organist, and they would page me. So I got a page one day, and I remember where I was. I was in the kitchen, of course, at the church. I love to hang out in the kitchen in the church. Anyway, I got this call, and it was Michael Crawford, and he said, he was a headliner in Las Vegas, and he said, I have been asked, this is Michael, I have been asked to do a PBS tour, and I would like you to be my music director. And he offered me an amazing amount of money, and he said, you'll conduct the orchestra, we'll be filmed, you'll go on tour. And I stayed silent. And he said, you love that church, don't you? And I said, I have to stay with the church. I can't leave the church. So he said, I understand, but my mother was, she said, you what? You could go back to the church, just tour with him. But I did stay with the church and didn't tour with Michael Crawford. So I Send in the Clowns is kind of my song about kind of odd timing and how things work out. And then the next piece I did on my junior recital in college. It's actually a transcription from George Gershwin of I've Got Rhythm. So it's actually written down exactly the way he would have played that piece. So I'm excited to be able to share these pieces with you. So Music in the Mirror, Send in the Clowns, and I've Got Rhythm. you. So all music people that do this for a living say, "Ooh, do you write music?" Well, I don't write music, but I love to make up music. So when I was planning this recital, I thought I should like make up some stuff because sometimes it really goes really well when I'm alone and I'm making up stuff. The only thing is I feel a little bit like that. That they have that on that show about the medium, and like she says, I don't feel anything in the room, and it's not coming to me. And I'm like, I know how you feel because sometimes I do wonderful music, and sometimes it's like terrible. It sounds like a 3-year-old tried to play it. So I'm going to have you think of, and I'm only going to pick one person per note, but I'm going to have you pick 3 notes, and I'm going to try to improvise a tune on those 3 notes. I'll play them first so you know what they are, and then so I don't cheat and just make up some other song. But I'm going to go get my pencil and paper, and I'll be right back. You're a fun audience too, by the way. Okay, so raise your hand if you have a musical note that you would like me to improvise on. Raise your hand. So I see the hand that's kind of in the middle there. E flat. Okay, so we have an E flat. Maybe somebody over here, Karen. Oh my God. G sharp. I should have made a few little payments before this thing. And Ann Foster. Ann Foster. C. Oh, D. I kind of hear what I want to hear, you know. You've heard that. Okay. So here goes. I'll play those notes for you, and then I'm going to make up some kind of tune. This could have shortened the recital a lot. Okay, so we have 3 other notes. I didn't get anyone over there. How about Beth? G. Okay. That person that's way in the back. B flat. Okay, and maybe somebody over here. Pick a note, any note. Gloria. D sharp. Most people don't know D sharps exist, so. Okay, so we have G, B flat, D sharp. Kind of hear a theme there. That was fun. After another 20 years, you can come back, and I won't be able to hear you, but we can work out a code where, maybe do the solfege and be able to do it that way. You've been a wonderful audience tonight. And as I said at the beginning of the concert, one of the things about longevity in a position is being with wonderful colleagues, wonderful clergy, and a church that is just so excited about everything they do. And I'm very proud of St. Andrew. It's been kind of a long journey. When we began 3 miles north from here, came down the road and built our first sanctuary in another location, and then 2010 built this sanctuary. And for those of you that are curious, we're not going to carpet the floors. They're going to stay cement until my last day here, and then you can buy carpeting and put in carpet. And so I'm going to play one more song, but Carla, did you want to come up? Because I heard rumor Carla wanted to speak. Carla's with our staff parish relations. In other words, this is my boss is here, so...
Mark, on behalf of Staff Parish Relations Committee and all of St. Andrew United Methodist, we want to say thank you. For 20 years, Mark has stood at the helm of St. Andrew United Methodist Church Music Department. He's touched countless lives of all ages and all walks of life through his music ministry. He employs his craft to break down social barriers and build relationships across diverse groups. During an average week, he conducts about 8 rehearsals while overseeing over 19 various choirs, handbells, orchestras, and specialty ensembles. In this era of vast political divides, growing socioeconomic schisms, and social exclusion, Mark uses music to provide a refuge for all people where they can safely dwell in an inclusive community. If you watch the faces of community members exiting a St. Andrew Music Department concert or recital, you will see happiness abound, contented faces, and many smiles. I'm uncertain, Mark, if we truly realize how lucky we are to have a thriving traditional church choir and music program at our church. Because of Mark's leadership, we are bucking the trend of the rest of the nation, where many church music programs are on the decline. Words cannot express our appreciation to Mark for ensuring that St. Andrew remains a beacon for others to see that it can be done. And now, Mark, I would like to give you $10,000 Unfortunately, even though I would like to, I'm unable to. However, we do have a small token of our appreciation for all you have done and continue to do to bless our St. Andrew community. Let's give Mark one more big hand.
know how I am about time, and we're over time, but I have a brief encore I could do if you want. But I wanted Kellen to put up a slide that tells you about the art show that kind of like celebrates 20 years of posters and stuff like that. So if you have a chance to look at some of those, they're in the back, but also in the hallway way far in the education wing. So I'm going to play just a brief piece. I'll go ahead and have you be seated. By one of my, I like this composer, but I think he's off in a monastery or somewhere now, but Cat Stevens. He doesn't seem to write stuff anymore. But anyway, I love the piece Morning Has Broken, so I'm going to play Morning.